You're welcome to type your initial questions into the chat box. I'll be monitoring that, and we can get back to those questions at the end of the presentation today. And after the three speakers have shared their lessons in leadership, I'll actually take the chance to invite you to turn your cameras back on and microphones, and we can have more of a dialogue. So I'm honored to have our three guests here today. We have three people who have been studying this topic for years. First, we have Dr. Henry Stanford. Dr. Stanford is our Associate Director of Applied Leadership. He's also one of our assistant professors of leadership in the Masters of Applied Leadership program. Dr. Stanford has worked in higher education, serving diverse populations for more than 27 years to help them improve their life skills and develop their leadership. He holds his EDD in leadership studies from Ashland University. Our second speaker is Dr. Valerie Smith. She's also been serving diverse student populations for Muskingum University for over 2 decades. She currently serves as the director of our Cultural Engagement and Inclusion Office, which focuses on serving historically underrepresented populations, in addition to supporting students traveling abroad and other global opportunities. Dr. Smith earned her doctorate of education degree from the University of Liverpool. So welcome, Val, as well. And then finally, we have our third speaker, Dr. John Stanford. And yes, they are brothers. Henry and John are brothers. Everyone I thought would ask that question. Dr. John Stanford is the state director of the Children's Defense Fund in Ohio. His dedicated public service for over the past 27 years includes higher education, K-12 education, nonprofit advocacy, and public policy assignments in supporting children and their families. Dr. Stanford holds his Juris Doctorate and Doctor of Philosophy degrees from The Ohio State University. So welcome to our special guests, and welcome all of you to join our conversation today. And with that, I'll turn it over to Henry.
Thank you so much, Robert. Thank you for the warm introductions. So to start off our conversation, the focus of today's talk is about supporting diverse populations. So the first thing you want to do is you want to define what are diverse populations. So as you can see in the slide, diverse populations range from age, ethnicity, race, sexual orientation, gender, but then it also expands to everything from education to the military experiences and other backgrounds as well. So within the DEIB work, you have diversity, which again is looking at the multiple identities and multiple groups, but also with the thoughts of inclusion, including the different populations, and a sense of providing belonging for them as they work within their setting. Equity is always the main thing that we're all looking for to advance within our work in DEIB at institutions and also in the workplace. From the standpoint of this slide, you can see on the left-hand side, you have equality, and that's what everyone is striving to give everyone the opportunity to have equal access in this slide to viewing the soccer match. But on the right is what we're all striving for, which is equity. Giving everyone the opportunity to observe the soccer match, but give needed for them to observe the match. So when it comes to this topic, Valerie, what are your thoughts on supporting diverse populations on college campuses?
Thanks so much, Henry. And Robert, as mentioned before, my name is Valerie Smith, and I serve as the Director of Cultural Engagement and Inclusion, or the CEI office at Muskingum University, which combines international programs, study abroad, diversity and inclusion initiatives on campus. So Henry gave a really great overview about the different aspects of diversity and what that looks like, but I want to focus a little bit more narrowly on the various student groups that we serve at Muskingum University. So looking at the list here in this slide, you can see the first three are really ones that are supported by the CEI office. Although as an inclusion office, we also try to support other offices and other student groups on campus. So BIPOC population, which is the Black, Indigenous, people of color, they formerly would have been called multicultural students on campus. They're LGBTQ+, so lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer. The plus could be questioning, transgender, asexual, allies, any of those different categories, and then international students and second language learners. But the university, when I think really about the populations that we serve and trying to create an inclusive environment, we really want to be cognizant of our commuter students, students that are working and not just maybe 5 hours on campus in an office, but really those that are working 20, 25 hours a week to try to supplement income at home or pay for their own college experiences. Our athletes that have big time commitments and restraints on not just time, but also on their physical bodies. Students that have learning differences, again, are going to take a longer amount of time to complete some of the work that they have, sometimes have some social anxieties about fitting in and feeling like they belong. Our veteran students, which come in with past experience that may impact the way that they learn. And then I have family tied on here, which could be a caregiver. Maybe you're providing care for a parent or another person. Maybe you are the parent and you are providing care for your own family. So these are different populations of students that we really want to think about. Next slide, please. So as we're thinking about being inclusive with these diverse populations of students, how can we as a community best serve the different groups? And certainly while we can't shield them from every hurdle or negative experience that they're going to face in life, we can earnestly, as individuals, try to mitigate the negative experiences that they have as much as possible. And step one of that is to raising your own awareness. So thinking about the student populations from the previous slide and reflecting on your interactions with them, either in the classroom, on the athletic field, in your office space. What do you need to be aware of to be supportive and inclusive to those different populations? Are there food insecurities that they might have? We're coming up to spring break pretty soon. Is there fear about going home for spring break because of an abusive family situation? What are different aspects that those populations have? And what shifts can you make in your own practice then to meet the needs of those students? So for example, I co-direct the International Fellows. And last spring, we had 2 students that followed the fasting practices of Ramadan. And our class met in the evening. So these individuals had gone without food for the entire day, and they do this for several weeks. So in our class, we made sure that we had food and snacks that were available during the class time. So when the sun did set and they were able to break their fast, that they were able to have something immediately available to them. And so they didn't feel singled out. We just had general snacks and food for the class to be able to participate. So they didn't feel awkward about being the only ones eating in that time. So good intentions are great, but you have to be aware of the needs of those students first in order to be inclusive. So how do you become aware, right? How do you educate yourself and then pass on that knowledge to others as well? At the end of the presentation, we're going to have an opportunity to share some resources if you have some that have worked well for you and you want to share those with others. And then we have some that we can share with you as well. Next slide, please. So the second step in helping this population is don't be a bystander. Bystanders are not innocent. If you see harm being done, you need to step in and you need to address it. And this is hard. It's hard work. These are the cringeworthy moments that you overplay again and again in your mind. And you know, you hear something in the classroom or in line at the bait shop or in the stands of an athletic game, and you just feel something's not right about what was said. And maybe you even feel pulled to act or respond to in some way. It's not the responsibility of the person on the receiving end of that microaggression to educate. It's your responsibility, and you never should underestimate the power that you have as an ally in those situations. So first, I would try to pause and diffuse the situation, because often words can get escalated and emotions come into play. So even just creating a pause. Let's just all take a breath for a minute. Let's remember who we're talking to and the importance of respecting each other. Try to redirect the conversation back to the original topic or the focus. Maybe you're in a discussion with someone who says something inappropriate about refugees going back to where they came from. That's a pretty common microaggression is, you know, why don't you go back to where you came from? So stating a way to get back to the original topic. I think we were talking about challenges faced by displaced people groups. thinking about what the topic is and bringing them centered back to the refocus on that. If the situation allows for it, talk about the comment and why it's incorrect. Education is always the best solution to a microaggression when it's possible to do so. Silence can infer that you condone and maybe even agree with what is said, so be careful of that. A few things to remember. You should try to correct and educate when it's possible to do so, even if you don't know if someone in the room is being harmed. So in the example that I just gave, it would be hard to know if someone in the setting had a close family member or a friend that had been impacted by a situation where they had to flee their home for safety. And not knowing necessarily who in the room or in the setting might be triggered by what is being said, then we still want to address that need. There's always an opportunity to educate them. We should take advantage of that. And keeping in mind that microaggressions are not micro in nature. They are negatively impactful and they can create trauma for those that experience them. Try to humanize the situation. Humans have a tendency to be kinder to each other individually than we are as groups. When I teach first semester seminar and when I have international orientation, I talk to these students as they're new to Muskingum University about confronting difficult conversations, and it can be scary. If it feels unsafe for you to say anything, then don't feel like you have to address the situation. But if you feel comfortable, you can say something, even if it's just short and direct. For example, if you hear a racial slur or a joke of some kind, you can respond with something like, hey, we don't really talk like that here. Muskies are better than that. And that tagline, that Muskies are better than that, can really carry a lot of weight because it creates this culture of inclusivity where intolerance is just not welcome. So thinking about something that you can say that you're comfortable, you can practice this, practice the conversations and how you would intervene if something should arise where you're a witness to an event on campus. Reporting is also another option on campus. If you do hear hateful speech or you witness a discriminatory action, you can report it to a university official. If you go to Muskingum's website and you type in reporting in the search bar, you'll be taken to a form where you can complete and report out on what it is that you witnessed. That form's also available through the CEI office website, Student Life, and Human Resource and Risk Management. You can complete the form anonymously if you want to as well, but stepping in some way and not being a bystander. Next slide, please. Finally, do no harm. So I've been an intercultural and diversity trainer for over 20 years, and my preferred method of training utilizes interactive simulations that can be a bit awkward and put people in uncomfortable situations for a time period, and then a debriefing that follows that. As that is my preferred method, I need to be very aware that people have different triggers. And an experiential session like that I create could really result in someone feeling re-victimized. This is a crucial part of learning to be a trainer. It's a reason why I won't do some training activities. For example, there's an activity some of you may be familiar with called the privilege walk. And in the privilege walk, people in a class setting or a group, the participants line up in a straight line all the way across, and they're read out different statements. For example, if you come from a family where one of your parents has a college education, take a step forward. If you've been able to attend a summer camp or a special training, take a step forward. If you've had financial insecurities where you've had to think about where your next home is going to be, take a step back. If you have a family member that has an alcohol or drug addiction or has had a problem with alcohol or drugs, take a step back. And it creates this disparity between the participants where those that have had a privileged life continue to move forward and those that have not take a step back. And at the end of the activity, you can look around and you can see where people are on the line. And it is a really great activity for the privileged. So who does that activity help and educate? It's the privileged. So they yes, know that they've had this life, but they really realize for the first time, oh, maybe I had access to resources that other people did not have. And so they look back and they say, wow, I really do have different opportunities, different power as part of that. Those that take steps back or are further in the back of those lines, it can really shame them. Those that are unprivileged will come out of that experience. They already know they're unprivileged. They don't need an activity to show them all the ways that they weren't able to have the same access as some of their peers. So really looking at the activities that you do. There are other activities that you can substitute in for ones like that have the same educational component without the self-identifiers that aren't re-victimizing or reharming those individuals. So really evaluate the types of activities that you're doing as well. Look at it from multiple perspectives. Check your bias when you go into the room. Everyone has bias, right? Implicit bias could be an entire workshop completely on its own. I think Henry would mute my microphone if I went on a tangent on that. I would definitely be over my time limit. But think about the bias that you bring in, and then be willing to conduct feedback about yourself, about your teaching methods or the way that you conduct yourself at work, and do an honest reflection about yourself. Think about comments, like if you're welcome to other comments, ask people that you really trust to give you reliable feedback about the way that you're conducting your work, whether it's in a classroom setting or outside or as a coach, and ask those individuals. Ask those that have graduated if an alumni base is a better option. You don't want to have power over somebody when they're asked to give you feedback. So if you're grading somebody, for example, if you're deciding the playing time of somebody, they're going to have bias based on the impact that they give back to you. So maybe it's an alumni that you ask about providing feedback for you. But think about those who have regular practices that you really like, and how can you emulate them? I know a lot of faculty that lay groundworks right from the very first day of classes about how students are to conduct themselves, how they respect their peers, the language that they use, being clear up front about what is not condoned in a space, and being consistent in addressing those infractions can really help create a more inclusive environment. One of the things I really appreciate about the Multicultural Lounge across the hall in Cambridge Hall is the authentic conversations that we have in there. There's no topic that's off limits. The students can talk about anything that they want to, but there's still acceptable and unacceptable language and a way to conduct yourself. So this slide does say do no harm. The reality is that we're going to do harm, right? We're humans and we make mistakes. And when you do, you apologize. You authentically apologize for those mistakes. You learn, you grow, and you continue to improve with words of inclusivity and actions that create a place to belong for all of our different Muskie populations. So I appreciate the time that you gave me today to give a snippet about our students. It's an area I'm passionate about. Working with diverse students populations is one that has a lot of theory and layers behind it, and we're only hitting the very surface. Again, at the end, we'll talk about some additional resources, but I do right now want to turn over the presentation to my colleague, Dr. John Stanford, who's standing by to hear his message about working with diversity practices in the workplace.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Valerie. Thank you, Henry and Robert, for allowing me to be a part of this webinar. I am very, very committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And anytime there's an opportunity to talk about the issues and to talk about what are the elements of successful DEI programs, I'm all for it. And so I'm very, very humbled and appreciative to be a part of today's conversation. What I'm tasked to talk about is diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace. And a lot of what Valerie shared with you applies to the workplace as well, because in essence, whether it is a college campus or whether it is a Fortune 500 company, or whether it's a small nonprofit like the Children's Defense Fund of Ohio, what we are talking about is really about how people get along with each other, how people feel like they belong and are contributing, to the culture and environment of where they are, and the relationships that we create in our interactions with each other based on those relationships. And I truly, strongly believe that all of that is encapsulated by the term culture. Organizations, college campuses, small nonprofits, there is a culture that exists with all of them. And it is important for us to understand how that culture should be structured and how that culture can be designed intentionally to make everyone feel like they belong, make everyone feel like they are important and respected by everyone that is a part of that culture. I am a big, big believer in Peter Drucker's statement. Uh, Culture eats strategy for breakfast, right? And he said that because, strategy is very, very important to organizational success, but culture is also very, very important to organizational success. And so today, what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about the elements of a strong DEI culture in the workplace, and then talk a little bit about what are the keys to having a strong strategic DEI program in the workplace. And then I would wrap it up with sharing some questions to ask as you are looking at an organization to understand, where that organization stands on the continuum of being a strong DEI organization or being a weak DEI organization. And so when we talk about the elements of a strong DEI culture, I think it boils down to focus, accountability, support, and learning, right? When we talk about focus, what is the mission, the vision, the values, and the goals of the organization? Can you see DEI terminology, DEI values being represented in those clear expectations for the organization? Those clear expectations of the organization provides the foundation for the interaction and the culture that is created in that organization. And so if you have DEI terminology and phrases and concepts as a part of your mission, vision, values, and your goals, then you're going to have that strong foundation to creating a very strong culture for the workplace. The second really critical element for having a strong DEI culture in the workplace is a legal framework. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is tied significantly when it comes to organizations to Title VII, which is the Civil Rights Act, Title IX, which is the federal law on women equality, and then you have state laws that mirror Title VII and Title IX, and you also may have local laws. Here in Columbus, where I live, the city of Columbus has been very aggressive in making sure that they have city ordinances on the books that respect diverse populations and encourage diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so that legal framework and how you train individuals on that framework and how you monitor and enforce compliance with that framework is a major part of that culture that you create in the workplace. Next, support systems. This is very important in terms of, as Valerie stated, as much as we want to be champions of diversity, equity, and inclusions, we're human and we're going to make mistakes. How do you address those mistakes is very critical for the social, emotional, and mental well-being of your peers and your colleagues that are a part of that culture and that organization with you. And so a lot of organizations offer employee assistance programs, which is kind of a counseling program that is available to employees. And so making sure that the organization that you are a part of, the workplace that you are a part of, has a strong employee assistance program or EAP that is willing to counsel and help when you may have those challenges or those struggles, in the workplace. Another helpful strategy that has been used over a number of years is employee resource groups. And employee resource groups are groups of volunteers in the organization who come together based on the diversity community that they are from. So you may have a veterans ERG, or a African American ERG, or a women's ERG, a disability ERG. And so those employee resource groups serve as a volunteer group that comes together and really supports the DEI goals and objectives of the organization through their volunteer efforts to organize events, activities, or provide support groups for people that are a part of that diversity group. And then last but not least, and having strong mentors in the organization as a part of that support system, and having a formalized mentoring program so that individuals can identify those individuals that could be mentors for them. Last but not least, every workplace, when it comes to a strong DEI culture, will have a strong continuous learning program or professional development program that is dedicated to really lifting up the different communities and the different diverse communities within the organization, and providing professional development and continuous learning around DEI concepts and DEI activities that can be utilized on a daily basis within the organization. So as I mentioned, culture is very important, but strategy is also very, very important. Next slide, please. And so when you are talking about having a strategic DEI framework in the workplace, there are, specific keys that you want to address and make sure that these elements are a part of your strategy when you are dealing with, the strategy for your workplace. First and foremost, you want to have effective leadership, right? And that goes from the board to the chief executive officer to the department heads of the organization, and also the C-suite in that organization. So your chief financial officer, your chief human resources officer. I believe strongly, because in the organizations that I have been a part of, you have a chief of diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? You have that person as a part of that leadership team, and their main responsibility is to make sure that the mission and the goals and the objectives and the vision are being adhered to. And you've got that person who is responsible for making sure that the organization is on track and stays on track in order to achieve its strategic plan and be an effective DEI workplace. Next is dedicated resources. And, quite frankly, I'm talking about the budget. Looking at the organizational budget and seeing if there are dedicated resources being made available to implement a strategic plan around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And is there a department of diversity, equity, and inclusion with a C-suite level executive in charge of that department, and making sure that that department and that individual is funded adequately in order to achieve the goals that have been established, through the strategic plan. Strategic programs and supports. Is there a strategic plan? And what are the programs and what are the activities and supports that are a part of that strategic DEI plan? And again, who's responsible for implementing and monitoring that plan to make sure that it is being implemented to fidelity, and making sure that the results of those programs and activities and supports are being monitored on a regular basis to know whether or not we're making progress towards those goals and objectives. And so, strategic programs and supports would be those supports and programs that are aligned to your strategic plan, which are then aligned to your goals and objectives and aligned to the vision and the mission of the organization. And so those programs, might be the EAP program, the ERG program. It could be the professional development program that you have in the organization. It could also be activities and cultural events that are established as a part of the organizational activities to celebrate the diversity that is within your organization. And then last but not least, effective enforcement and compliance. As I mentioned earlier, having that strong legal framework, having the professionals in the organizations that are monitoring reports from individuals who feel like there have been incidents of discrimination. You have to have an effective enforcement and compliance program where, one, people feel comfortable coming forward with those challenges that are within your organization, and that they won't be, isolated, or they won't be ostracized because they did come forward. But then secondly, you want to make sure that that office is fully equipped, or that unit is fully equipped to thoroughly investigate the situation, come up with recommendations in order to go forward, and then be able to see that those recommendations are carried forward and fulfilled. And through that type of enforcement and compliance, the individuals in your organization will feel like their needs are being met and they are being respected. And so a major part of that enforcement and compliance is offering professional development that make people aware of many of the concepts and many of the terms that Valerie shared during her presentation. So what are the questions that you need to ask when you are looking at an organization and looking at, how strong is the DEI program in the workplace? Next slide, please. I think first and foremost, you need to take a look at the DEI mission, vision, values, and goals of the organization, and ask the question: are the concepts, are the DEI concepts clearly stated and clearly reflected in the mission, in the vision, in the values, and the goals of the organization? In essence, is there a true commitment to DEI in that organization? Because if there is a true commitment, it's going to be reflected in your mission, your vision, your values, and your goals as an organization. Secondly, is there a strong legal framework in place? Is there a compliance office and enforcement office? Is there an individual that's in charge of that office? Does that office have adequate staffing and adequate resources in order to carry out the objective of enforcement and compliance within the organization? And most importantly, has that office with that legal framework created the type of respect and the type of outreach with the individuals in the organization so that everyone feels comfortable interacting, with that legal framework and with that office. And as I said, having effective professional development program around the different concepts, the different terminology, and the different scenarios that may occur in the workplace through professional development is a major part of having a strong legal framework. Third, are there quantitative and qualitative DEI metrics and data to know whether or not you are making progress or not on the goals and objectives that have been established as a part of your DEI strategic plan? And is there a DEI strategic plan that can be referred to? And what type of training is in the plan in order to make sure that people are aware of the importance of DEI to the organization? Are there adequate resources in the organizational budget dedicated to implement the DEI plan? Is there a senior leader in the organization? I've already mentioned how important this is. You have to have a senior leader that's a part of the C-suite that is responsible for developing strategy, that is forward thinking and looking ahead 3 to 5 years down the road to say, okay, here's where we are now with our DEI program. Where do we want to take that program 3 years from now, 5 years from now? And have that person also the one that's accountable for monitoring the progress that is in the plan and holding people accountable to the plan. And so those are the questions I think are very, very important in assessing whether or not an organization has truly made a commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and being a part of having a strong culture and a strong strategy to make the organization a place where everyone feels like they belong, everyone is respected, and everyone is celebrating each other's differences as a community, and everyone comes together to have a strong, holistic organization that is committed to improving everyone's life and circumstances. And that is it for me, and I will turn it back over to my brother, Henry.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, John. So the biggest thing that you've heard from both Valerie and John is that building a culture of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging starts with leadership. It starts with coming together as a college campus or as an organization and putting everything in place to build the diversity for growth, to provide equity within your ranks, to make sure that every individual is included and feel inclusion. And the big one is belonging, feeling that they're belonging within the organization, feeling that they're belonging on campus. And by building this culture and having a culture of inclusion and equity and belonging in the workplace and on campus is so critically important. As a leader, establishing a strategic plan, programming put in place, and asking the right questions is critical to being able to develop a DEIB program that's going to build your organization, but also build your college campus. That is a way of building everyone and involving everyone from diverse populations to feel comfortable and prosper and grow. So Valerie, can you go over some of the resources that you mentioned earlier that we have here at Muskingum University?
Yeah, absolutely. I know all of you are not necessarily tied in and currently employed at the university. So certainly I would ask you to look for resources at your own workplace as well. You might be surprised what you find there. But for those of you that are Muskies and either through employment or connections, we do have a number of resources available. So there's something called the Belonging Seminar. So through the Council for Independent Colleges, which we are a member of, there is an 8-week-long micro-credential course that is offered, and we get to choose 6 individuals every year to go through that particular seminar. You're actually earning several digital badges, 4 digital badges as part of that. They're 2 weeks long, each one of those. And it's about 3 to 5 hours of work in a given week. But if you're connected to campus, you can ask myself, Mary Lynn McCollum, Jen Bronner, or Sarah Daly about that. The four of us went through it last year, but we do have 6 spots available for any employees, faculty, staff that are interested in going through that. CIC also has a huge library, almost an overwhelming library of resources, in particular for faculty, but some for staff as well. So our Vice President of Student Experiences, Shelley Zalay, is working with our Center for Teaching and Learning and making those resources available. There is a login that's required. That's the hang up on that piece of it. So we're trying to make those accessible and identify ones that are probably the most crucial to our population of students. So look for that to be coming out soon. I'm going to do a shameless plug because I have your undivided attention. We are launching a new micro-credential course here. And we're doing a launch for that on Tuesday, February 20th in Cambridge Hall 138 at 4 p.m. So you can learn about this newest digital badge, which is on diversity and inclusion. And it's going to take some of the topics that I talked about, but do a deeper dive and really go more in depth. That's open, targeted for first-year students or undergraduate population, but really open to anybody that just wants to be able to grow and feel more current and updated with their diversity language and skill sets. So John did an excellent job of mentioning professional development, conferences, webinars. In particular, since post-COVID, the number of webinars that are available is really immense. Look for whatever your professional development network is. Diversity is a buzzword. It's not hidden. They all should have diversity agendas. And so ask about what it is that they're doing, what training that they are providing. Go on their websites and look for those webinars and conferences. I certainly also want to invite you to the Cultural Engagement and Inclusion Office here in Cambridge Hall. So our staff is equipped to be able to do diversity presentations and trainings for different audiences. If you're not from Muskingum and you're looking for exterior, I've presented to a variety of different human resource groups, Columbus Gas, Cary Enterprises, other universities. So if you're looking for different types of diversity training to happen in your workplace as well, or with your student group or your faculty development within your department, anything like that, feel free to reach out to us as well. We're happy to provide you with that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Valerie. Thank you so much, John. So I'll turn everything back over to Robert to take us into questions and from the audience.
Well, hello, everybody. Again, thank you so much to our speakers for giving us some food for thought. I invite everyone who is our guest today, if you'd like to, please feel free to turn on your camera. You could also turn on your microphone, or you could also use our chat function if you have a question and you would just like to type it in and I can read it for us. I'm actually going to start with a question for 2 of our guests. The first is for Valerie and the next is for John. Valerie, I was listening to the radio the other day, and I'm embarrassed to say that I didn't realize this more, but speaking of diverse populations, on college campuses, how there's a population that is food insecure. And this radio program was talking about actually a food bank at a large university in Southeast Ohio, and how that's really serving a student need that I just really, to be honest with you, did not realize that was there. I guess my question for you, Val, is if you don't know, you can't necessarily provide the resources that people need to be successful in the organization. How can we go about learning more about those people that are in our organizations so we can create an environment that is welcoming to everybody?
Yeah, and that's a great point, and so many layers to that too, because when you first start talking about food insecurities, in my mind, I'm thinking, yep, I've done food stamps with students and applying for that. If you're commuter students, if you file taxes as an independent student, you can, if it's not a campus address, you can apply for that. We've got a food bank here in our local town of New Concord. If you have already done the food stamp one, you're automatically qualified for that. You don't have to do anything else. And so there's great resources. You'd be surprised how much it costs to wash your clothes at a laundromat. They have services provided on Wednesday evenings to help people that have difficulties just in being able to afford the local laundromat. And that's done through the local churches that they'll go and pay for washing and drying. But if you don't think about the fact that people are maybe having these concerns, how do you even know to ask the question,
Right.
where are food banks located, if you're not aware of the fact that students might need this? That's the hardest part, is identifying all the different needs of various populations. And to be transparent, so I've done a lot of diversity, cultural and ethnic diversity for the most part, is a bulk of my work. And just 2 years ago, I started working with our LGBTQ population. I didn't know anything, you know, I felt very ignorant in the work that I was doing. And so seeking out places, where can I get training? What students can I talk to? What other people in my life do I know that I can have these conversations with, to start asking questions? And once you're bold enough to start those conversations, you're really surprised at what they're willing to reveal to you. They're not going to reveal to you anything if they don't first trust you. So being authentic and upfront about why you're asking, I really want to grow as a professional. I want to be able to serve the students that I'm meeting with. What can you share with me about your experience?
Just as opening, I guess, opening the door, and not necessarily asking something specific like, are you food insecure? But how can we better assist you? How could we make this organization more capable of meeting your needs? Something as open as that.
Mm-hmm. And you'll be surprised the resources we have available on campus. I had a faculty member ask me, do you know, I have a student that's afraid to go home for one of the breaks, or it's not really a good situation for him to go home to. And I'm like, oh, Student Affairs absolutely has a process for those students, that we can work with them on getting them a place here on campus during that break. But if you don't know if that's the first time a student has voiced that concern, connecting with other staff members about who has those resources.
John, I have a question for you. I know that we have some folks on the call that are more in the area of perhaps small business or nonprofit, and they don't necessarily have the resources to hire a DEI officer in the C-suite, right? How can organizations like that still seek to make their organization welcoming and equitable and supportive if they don't have some of these resources?
That is an awesome question. And I really do believe that especially as a nonprofit, if you're a small business, I would definitely direct you to your local chamber of commerce, or with your state Ohio Chamber of Commerce, because a lot of businesses have identified how important DEI programs are to the success of their organizations, in terms of employee relationships, but also the connection to their customers, right? And as Henry, shared earlier in the presentation, diversity goes well beyond just race and gender. There are all types of different groups of people that are reflected in the concept of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So businesses know the importance of DEI to their bottom lines and to the success of their organizations. And as a result of that, chambers of commerce have made DEI a part of their training opportunities. And if you're a nonprofit locally, I'm pretty sure he's not going to mind. I just had a great meeting with a gentleman by the name of Michael Corey the other day. And Michael is the executive director for the Human Services Chamber here in Franklin County. And so that organization works as a chamber of commerce, if you will, for nonprofits and human service oriented organizations. And so they have experts that they can refer people to. They also have training opportunities around these subjects. And so I would, strongly encourage, if you just Google Human Services Chamber Franklin County, it should pop up in a Google search. And I would recommend, those, especially in the nonprofit world, in the on the webinar, to contact Michael. And you can even say, John Stanford said to contact him. And I'm pretty sure he will not mind you reaching out to him. I think the third thing that I would say also is, as a nonprofit, a small nonprofit, you more than likely have a board for your nonprofit. And so then, to check with your board and find out if they've got DEI connections and resources that you can connect to on a volunteer basis, and see if they can connect you to services and resources that are volunteer, right? As a small nonprofit, you're always watching your dollars. So I get that and understand that. And then last but not least, I don't want to put Muskingum on the hook here, but check your local university or college campus and see what services they may offer. I'm an alum of Ohio State, and Ohio State, through the John Glenn, that name may sound familiar to you guys, through the John Glenn College of Public Affairs, they have a nonprofit and a professional development office, and they offer professional development courses all the time. They can sometimes be a little bit pricey, but as a nonprofit, you may be able to get a discount, for those professional development opportunities. And so checking with your local college campus or your local university campus to see if there are programs and resources and people that you can have access to help you achieve your DEI program goals as a small nonprofit or a small business, I think is something, another resource that you can look at as well.
Thank you. I also noticed, Val, you popped your name and contact information in our chat here. Did you want to say something about that, or?
Nope, just if anybody needed my contact. As John was talking about the individual that he knew, I thought maybe it'd be helpful if we just put our contacts in there.
Well, I appreciate that. Would it be okay if people were to reach out to you should they have questions? I know we've got alum on the call. We also have people who are current students. Some of our master's students are on the call, and they're in these other organizations. So I think this is very helpful. So I want to open this up and make sure we've got some time for our audience to ask any questions. Would anyone like to either open their mic and ask a question of our guests, or did you want to type something in our chat here? I welcome you to do that. I'm just making sure that I can see my screen. Any questions? Go ahead and just pop in if you have one.
And I would say questions or maybe best practices. If you've had a situation or experience that you really learned from and you think that would be worth sharing, you're welcome to use this platform too.
Well, not hearing any at this point, I am going to say thank you. And Henry, would you bring up our other screen, if you would, please?
Yeah.
So first of all, I want to say thank you to Henry Stanford for organizing and kicking this off today. I want to thank Valerie Smith for being here and sharing her expertise, and also Dr. John Stanford for being here. It was really neat to meet John personally over the video today, because I've known Henry for so long and I've never met John. So it was really nice to see the brothers. And Valerie, it's always a joy to work with you and your office. So thank you so much for being here. And the other folks that I want to thank for being here today are our guests. Thank you for taking an hour of your time to learn about this very important aspect of leadership. And thank you so much for being here today. This whole series is sponsored by the Masters of Applied Leadership and the Doctor of Applied Leadership. And we encourage you, if you are interested in pursuing your education at either of these levels, please reach out to either Henry or me, and we would be happy to talk a little bit more about that curriculum and how we can meet your career goals. I also see John has popped here in our chat and wants to share a quick plug. So John, absolutely you can share a quick plug.
Thank you very much, Robert. You asked Valerie the question, and you used food scarcity on college campus as the backdrop for that question. And it reminded me of there has been some recent rule changes at the state level so that more college students are eligible for food assistance through the SNAP program. And because of that, if people want to get more information on that, please feel free to shoot me an email, and I can put you in contact with the person on our team at the Children's Defense Fund who is, our point person on this initiative at the state level, and we can get that information to you.
Thank you so much. There are so many layers, like you said, to this. Diversity is not just one thing. And the more we learn, I think the more we can think, how can we help the people in our organizations truly be successful and those organizations be successful? So again, thank you to our guests. Thank you to the people who have attended today as audience members. Please, we've got a couple things that I just want to point out. We are going to have another conversation around supporting diverse groups on the 21st of this month at 6 o'clock. We do them usually at noon and 6 o'clock, and we will have another guest for that. So please reach out to us if you'd like to sign up for that. And then next month in March, on March 15th, we're having one of our professors who teaches our Leading Teams course talk about how to lead an effective team. So that's our next leadership lesson series that's coming in March. Please visit our website to learn more about our programs, and feel free to call our office, and we hope to see you soon. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great afternoon.